On the 19th of November 2025, Bubs officially became a permanent resident. Let's talk about it. But first, let's quickly recap how we got from student visa to temporary residency on the partner visa. So in November of 2022, his visa at the time, which I mentioned was the student visa, was coming to an end, and we had two choices. The first was to renew the student visa because he still met the requirements for that, or two, to find another substantive visa and apply for that, which we ultimately ended up going with the partner visa because we had a suspicion that if we didn't do it, then later down the line we would still have to do it anyway. So we start looking for lawyers and migration agents, and we ultimately settle on Mason Chen Law Group. Now they are based out of Melbourne, which means we had a 100% virtual experience with them, which we were fine with. In December of 2022, we sign a fixed cost contract with them, and we proceed with the partner visa. We spend the next couple of months gathering documents and writing statements, getting friends and family to fill out forms, contacting relevant people to help us with different aspects of the documentation. Now, in March of 2023, we officially lodge our application, and within a week, Bubs is placed on the bridging visa A. Now, we go for a period of time and we don't really hear from immigration until May of 2023, and they ask us for a health check. We proceed with the health check, we get that submitted to the department through our lawyer, and then in June of the same year, so we're still in 23, we re-engage the law firm to help us with a bridging visa B so we can travel to Thailand for a friend's wedding. Now, within a month of us coming back from the wedding, we're now in August. It is the 14th of August 2023, and we get the phone call that we were granted temporary residency. Now, I do have a full-length video that goes into a lot more details about that application process, and I will link that down below for you guys as well, just in case there's anyone who's interested. Now, we kind of go about life and we continue living, and then on Lunar New Year 2025, we receive a phone call from the law firm very unexpectedly. Bubs and I are at the 8 having yum cha, and we get a phone call telling us that we are now eligible for the PR component of the partner visa, and basically the law firm just calls to see if we would like to proceed. Obviously for us it was a no-brainer, so what was that process? In February of 2025, we sign a new fixed cost contract with Mason Law Chen once again, and we restart the process. I will say this time, because we knew that this was going to come eventually and we had a rough idea of the department's timeline, we had actually kind of been keeping documentation. So unlike the temporary residency component, there were a lot of documents, receipts, proof, photos, things we kind of already had sitting and waiting. That being said, there was still plenty to be done. When you're gathering documents for your permanent residency, it is really, really important you only focus on evidence from your date of lodgement. So don't bother going back 4 years looking for evidence. There's a really strong focus on what for us was pretty much the last 24 months. So new photos, new purchases, don't really resubmit anything that you already submitted before. This may not be the case for everyone. It was for Bubs. Both of us had a decent chunk of ID that expired in 2024, so we needed to have them reissued, obviously, by the issuing bodies, and then we had to scan new copies of them to the law firm. So I believe both of us, our driver's licenses both expired. His photo card expired, but we didn't renew that. His ID card in China expired, and we did renew that. I think that might have been it for documentation we resubmitted, but we had to scan fresh copies of those over to the firm for them to attach to our file. We also had to redo our police checks. So similar to the previous application, I only did an Australian police check. Bubs again did an Australian and Chinese. The Chinese we did more as a precaution on the advice of our agent. We updated our travel history as we had both travelled in and out of Australia since lodgement, and because we technically lodged in, I think, July, end of July, we also had to include the dates from our China trip this year. So that was China, Macau and Hong Kong. We still needed to get family and friends to complete the form 888. I think for the first round we had 6 people do it. We only had 4 people who did it for the second round, and 3 of them did it for the temporary residency. You don't have to have the exact same people, but we were still in touch with, well, we were still technically in touch with everyone, but I kind of just put some feelers out there, and whoever could get it back to me the fastest, I just used. I think this was the most time-consuming part, but it was rewriting our personal statements. So similar to the temporary residency, you have to write a personal statement, and the best way to describe it is if you were to draw a Venn diagram, there would be some similarities in both statements, but slight differences as well. That being said, when I say differences, I mean don't make it look like you wrote the statements together, but also don't have conflicting pieces of information. Like, it's okay for me to put something in there that Bubs makes no reference to and vice versa, but don't do something where I'm saying, oh, I want 4 kids, and he's saying he wants to be child free. Like, definitely huge no-no. But we had to rewrite our personal statements. For this one, mine was the only one that needed to be in a stat dec format signed by a JP. So we submitted Bub's statement as a PDF document, and then we had to reformat mine and get a JP to sign it, which is where the delay comes in, because when that document is ready to be signed, we're in China, and obviously in China I can't find a JP, so we had to wait till we got back to Australia to kind of handle that aspect of it. While that is all happening, our lawyer is filling out the forms and then sending them back to us, and we basically proofread it. If we think there's anything that needs to be changed, we flag it with her, she changes it, sends it back to us, and we kind of just keep doing that until both parties are satisfied with the document. That being said, I think we only got to version 3, so it's not like we were playing ping pong with this thing. It kind of just went back once or twice. There are a few little spelling things here and there, but overall not that many revisions required. The PR application is officially lodged on the 30th of July, and we are advised to go for a police check in China, even though technically Bubs hasn't lived there for an extended period of time in the last decade, which is usually the criteria, but we had just gotten back from a 3-week vacation there. So we decide to go ahead and do it regardless. So we get the police check done, we get it translated by a NATI certified translator, we submit it to the lawyer and pass it through to immigration. So whether immigration ever were going to ask for it or not, can't tell you, because we kind of got a step ahead of that. 113 days later, I'm sitting on the couch going through my junk box of all things, and there's an email from the lawyer. And I only open it because I recognize her name, obviously. And it's very simple. We've been granted permanent residency. And when I say we, I mean Bubs has been granted permanent residency. So what now? Now, this information I'm about to read to you was attached to, oh, that's bright, was attached at the bottom of the email. So now, as a permanent resident, he has the following rights. He has the right to remain in Australia indefinitely. He has full working rights and study rights. He can enroll in Medicare. He can travel in and out of Australia as long as he has the correct travel permit, and if he qualifies, he can choose to apply for Australian citizenship. He can also work in New Zealand. Now, unlike Australian citizens, these are the things he can't do. He can't hold an Australian passport, he can't vote in elections, he can't return to Australia without a valid travel permit, and he can't access student loans. On to citizenship. Now, to qualify for citizenship, you must meet all of the following criteria. You must have lived in Australia for at least 4 years on a valid visa, which Bubs has. He's been here, I think, over a decade. You must have lived in Australia as a permanent resident for at least 12 months, which obviously He doesn't meet that criteria. He's only just been granted permanent residency, and you cannot have been away from Australia for more than 12 months combined in the last 4 years and no more than 90 days in the last 12 months, which he also ticks that box. So based on that criteria, in November of 2026, he is technically eligible for citizenship. Travel rights. Now, I mentioned this a few times, but when you receive your initial grant, you actually get a 5-year travel facility permit. So for him, this means that until November 19th, 2030, he can travel internationally as much as he wants to. However, after that, he must apply for another travel facility permit, which currently at this time ranges from I think about $490 to $570 based on your application method, and it is usually valid for 5 years. If we get to 2030 and he decides not to renew the travel permit, he can still continue to live in Australia and work and study and all of those things, but he cannot leave the country and come back because he doesn't have basically a re-entry visa, is what I would best describe it as. I definitely don't think this is the end of our journey with immigration, especially, you know, once we're married and my in-laws want to come and visit. I imagine there's going to be plenty of things that we still have to do with immigration and the department in terms of getting his family over to visit and things like that. But as for us, and as it specifically pertains to the partner visa, outside of the travel permit needing to be renewed, this is very much the end of the partner visa journey for us. It has been, what was it, I guess November 2022 to November 2025. So almost 3 years end to end, almost exactly to the date. Actually, the next step I think for us is to have some very lengthy discussions both between Bubs and myself and him and his family, that I won't be a part of those conversations, as to what he wants to do for citizenship. I think a lot of people think it's very straightforward, but unfortunately he comes from a country that doesn't do dual citizenship. I think this decision, obviously, for someone, you know, for example, who's from the UK, might be a lot easier of a choice to make, purely because the UK offers dual citizenship with Australia, so you can carry both. China does not. So if he was to go for Australian citizenship, he would need to basically forfeit or surrender his Chinese citizenship. And so for us, not that straightforward. I'm obviously not very worried about any future children we may have down the line, because they will by default be entitled to Australian citizenship through me, so no concerns there. But yes, we do need to have some very lengthy discussions. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down below and I will answer them. Obviously not legal advice, but if you would like to have a little bit more of a private conversation, feel free to send me a message via Instagram DMs. This is my Instagram handle. That is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. Bye!